In the early morning in Boston, the kitchen of a Bella Kitchen was already bustling with activity. Lynn Morrison skillfully chopped vegetables while basking in the morning sunlight streaming through the window. Passion shone in her eyes. "Lynn, yesterday's special menu was a big hit with the customers," smiled Marcus Johnson, the owner. He had highly valued her talent since hiring her 10 years ago. "Thank you, Marcus," Lynn smiled. "But don't you think I'm overstepping my bounds as just a waitress?" Marcus frowned. "You're not just a waitress. I know you trained at that restaurant in New York. Why do you keep hiding your talent?" Lynn continued silently working her knife. 10 years ago, she had been promised a bright future under a famous chef. But when her mother Helen suddenly fell ill, she returned to her hometown and continued working at Bella Kitchen. Officially she was a waitress, but many of the restaurant's signature dishes were secretly developed by her. "Things at home have settled down, haven't they?" Marcus asked gently. "You don't need to be tied to the past forever." Lynn shrugged. "It's just habit. Besides, my mother doesn't want me to become a chef." When she got home, Lynn overheard her mother Helen speaking enthusiastically on the phone. "Yes, I've booked the venue. Ashley's wedding will be the talk of the town." Lynn tried to quietly head to her room, but Helen noticed her. "Lynn, you're home. I was just talking about Ashley and Jason's wedding." "Yes, I heard," Lynn replied flatly. "Is the preparation going well?" Helen's face lit up. "Of course. It's a marriage with the Carter family. Everyone in town will be envious." Lynn tried to smile, but her heart ached every time she heard Jason Carter's name. 5 years ago, when he visited town on business, Jason and Lynn fell in love over dinner at Bella Kitchen. After a year of long-distance dating, he suddenly cut off contact. The shock of later learning he was dating her sister Ashley was still unforgettable. "Lynn, don't you think it's time to think about your future?" Helen sighed. 35 and still working as a waitress. "I like my job," Lynn said, though deep down she harbored different feelings. Entering the living room, she found her stepfather Walter relaxing on the sofa. He ran a local real estate company, and the Morrison family belonged to the town's wealthy class. To Lynn, who never knew her biological father, Walter was her father. "Hi, Lynn," Walter looked up from his newspaper. "You're home late again." "We had a lot of customers," Lynn answered briefly. The front door swung open vigorously, and Ashley made a glamorous entrance. She was 7 years younger than Lynn, but her beauty and sociability had earned her their parents' adoration. "Mom. I brought back my engagement ring after the adjustment." Ashley proudly displayed a sparkling diamond ring. "Jason's father said he wanted to change it to a bigger diamond." Helen happily admired the ring. "It's beautiful. The Carter family is so generous." "Lynn, want to look?" Ashley thrust the ring toward Lynn. Lynn forced a smile. "It's lovely." Ashley smiled with satisfaction. Jason prepared a ring worthy of the most beautiful bride in town. Lynn nodded silently. After college graduation, Ashley started working at her father's company and got engaged to Jason 8 months ago. "We're having a family dinner the day after tomorrow. Jason's father is coming too, so I've made reservations at Le Sherry," Helen said. "Lynn, you'll join us, won't you?" "I'll try to change my shift," Lynn answered quietly. Helen and Ashley resumed talking about the wedding, seemingly forgetting Lynn's presence. She quietly retreated to her room. From the back of her closet, she pulled out an old cooking notebook and flipped through the pages. Recipes filled with her dreams and passion. Lynn sighed deeply. Lying on her bed, she thought about the upcoming family dinner. Her heart was heavy with complicated feelings about seeing Jason again and the lack of expectations from her family. It was clear that her mother and sister were ashamed of her being single, and their attitude was getting worse as Ashley's wedding approached. The soft lighting at Le Sherry elegantly illuminated the crisp white tablecloths and silver cutlery. Lynn arrived a little late and found her family already seated: Helen, Walter, Ashley, and Jason Carter with his father Robert. Conversation paused momentarily as Lynn took her seat. "Finally, you're here," Helen frowned. "We were about to order." "I'm sorry, it took time to adjust my shift," Lynn answered politely. "Bella Kitchen is especially busy on weekends." "Being a waitress must be tough," Ashley said lightly, her tone containing a hint of mockery. Lynn picked up the menu, consciously trying to avoid making eye contact with Jason. However, she couldn't help feeling his gaze. "Lynn, it's been a while," Jason said. His voice was composed, but his eyes held complex emotions. "Yes, it has," Lynn responded flatly. Robert cleared his throat. "Lynn, Jason has told me about you. You work at a local restaurant, right?" "Yes, Bella Kitchen." "Ah, that place." Robert's eyes lit up. "Excellent restaurant. Especially that duck confit, it's superb. All our business partners rave about the food there." Lynn smiled slightly. In fact, she had created the recipe for that duck confit. "Well, it's an ordinary restaurant," Ashley shrugged. "Not bad for this town." The waiter came to take their orders, briefly interrupting the conversation. After everyone had ordered, Helen happily began discussing the wedding preparations. "Now, let's talk about the wedding preparations. Ashley, have you sent out all the invitations?" Ashley smiled, but her eyes glanced sideways at Lynn. "Yes, Mom. But..." Walter put down his wine glass. "Is there a problem?" Ashley looked at Lynn with an unpleasant expression. "Actually, there's something I need to tell Lynn." Lynn looked up in surprise. "Me? What is it?" Helen sighed. "It's about the wedding, Lynn." Lynn replied calmly despite her confusion. "Is there something I can help with?" A silence fell, and the atmosphere grew heavy. Helen took another sip of wine before speaking in a clear tone. "We don't want you to come." Lynn momentarily doubted her ears. "What are you saying?" Helen continued coldly. "I'll be honest. It's embarrassing to have an unmarried woman over 30. I don't want relatives and Jason's family to see you on Ashley's special day." Lynn was speechless. She could feel the blood draining from her face. Ashley continued with a laugh. "It would be out of place for a waitress to attend such a glamorous ceremony. Jason's family are all successful people." Jason started to speak but ultimately remained silent, continuing his meal with an uncomfortable expression. His father Robert raised his eyebrows in surprise but said nothing. "I understand," Lynn's voice trembled slightly. The air around the table seemed frozen. Lynn gracefully stood up and placed her napkin on the table. Her movements were elegant, and she spoke without raising her voice. "After all these years of devotion to you all, to be treated like this." Helen made no attempt to hide her irritation. "You're being dramatic. Always playing the victim." Lynn silently stood up and left. Her back was straight, maintaining her dignity. As she exited the restaurant, she happened to make eye contact with Marcus Johnson, the owner of Bella Kitchen, who was dining there. Marcus noticed something was wrong with Lynn and started to stand, but Lynn waved him off lightly and hurried outside. The cool night air chilled her heated cheeks. Lynn started walking while taking deep breaths, when suddenly her phone rang. It was from an unknown New York number. After a moment's hesitation, she answered. "Ms. Morrison, this is Daniel Belmont, executive chef at Le Savoir in New York," a calm male voice resonated. "I heard about you from Marcel Renoir." Lynn's heart skipped a beat. Marcel Renoir was the famous chef she had trained under 10 years ago. "Mr. Renoir?" "Yes, he calls you the undiscovered gem. Actually, I'd like to offer you the head chef position at our restaurant." Lynn was speechless. The chef's dream she had abandoned 10 years ago was calling to her again. Take your time if you need to think about it, Daniel continued. But I'd appreciate your response as soon as possible. Yes. I'll think about it, Lynn answered with a trembling voice. After hanging up, she looked through the restaurant window at her family's table. They were continuing their conversation as if nothing had happened. Ashley was talking happily about something, with Helen and Walter listening intently. Only Jason seemed a bit uncomfortable, though he was still smiling. Tears welled up in Lynn's eyes, but she wiped them away. For a long time, she had put her dreams aside for her family, her mother's illness, family expectations, and heartbreak. She had accepted and quietly endured it all. But now, something was beginning to change within her. Enough is enough, Lynn whispered. She took out her smartphone and began searching for flight tickets to New York. Occasionally looking up at the restaurant window, she solidified her decision to change her life. If her family was ashamed of her, her only option was to follow her own path. And perhaps that path would be brighter than she had thought. The offer from Le Savoir was no mere coincidence. Marcus had secretly contacted Marcel Renoir and told him about Lynn's talent. For years, he had been looking for a place where Lynn could truly demonstrate her abilities. And now, that opportunity had arrived. A week before the wedding, the kitchen of A Bella Kitchen was busy from early morning. However, it seemed to lack its usual vibrancy. Staff members talked in hushed voices, occasionally glancing at Lynn's desk and sighing. Marcus Johnson entered the kitchen and picked up Lynn's handwritten recipe notebook. It contained detailed recipes for all the dishes she had developed. She was truly exceptional, said Tony, a veteran chef. I still don't understand why someone with such talent worked as a waitress. Marcus smiled and replied, sometimes it takes time for talented people to spread their wings. But when the time comes, no one can stop them. The entrance bell rang, and Marcus walked to the dining area of the restaurant, which was not yet open. A tall man stood at the door. It was Jason Carter. I'm sorry, we're not open yet, Marcus said. I want to talk to Lynn Morrison. Jason's expression was serious. After watching Jason for a moment, Marcus opened the door and let him in. Lynn isn't here anymore. Jason showed a surprised expression. What do you mean? Where did she go? Marcus looked at Jason across the counter. She chose a new path. Seems like she won't be attending your wedding. What? Why would she? Jason's voice was filled with confusion. Marcus quietly asked, by the way, Jason, do you remember 5 years ago? Jason's expression hardened. He remembered when he met Lynn and fell in love with her 5 years ago. He gave a small nod. Do you remember her? Lynn from back then? Of course, Jason answered quietly. I never forgot. Marcus poured coffee for both of them and offered a cup to Jason. Did you know that Lynn was actually a genius chef who developed the signature dishes of A Bella Kitchen? Jason's eyes widened in surprise. What? That duck confit, the truffle risotto, and the seafood bisque your father raves about, they're all her recipes, Marcus continued. The food served at your father's company party was also made by Lynn. Though officially a waitress, she was actually our hidden head chef. Jason's hand gripped his cup tightly. Why did she hide it? Because her mother didn't approve of her becoming a chef. Lynn was training at a top restaurant in New York 10 years ago. But she had to return home because of her mother's illness. And then I hurt her, Jason quietly continued. I abandoned her. Marcus nodded. She was hurt. But she suffered even more from not being understood by her family. Jason sighed deeply. I never meant to hurt Lynn. But you did. And now her family has too, Marcus's voice contained severity. She deserves to pursue her dreams. That's why I sent her off. Where to? New York. She got a position as head chef at a restaurant called Bleu Savoir. The color drained from Jason's face. Bleu Savoir was a high-end restaurant his father's company often used to entertain important business partners. Her talent is genuine. She's been buried in this small town for 10 years, but that time is over, Marcus continued. Lynn is now following her own path. Jason put down his coffee cup and gazed out the window. In his heart, questions about his marriage to Ashley began to surface. Their relationship had been heavily influenced by the business connection between her father's real estate company and the Carter family. The truth was that Lynn was the one he truly loved. I regret it, Marcus. I regret abandoning her, Jason confessed honestly. Marcus looked sternly at Jason. If you have time for regrets, you should be honest with your heart. Marriage is a lifelong promise. If you marry the wrong person, 3 people will be unhappy. Jason stood up and took a copy of the recipe notebook that Marcus had retrieved from a safe. What's this? Recipes Lynn left behind. She asked me to give this to you. She said, to remember the past. After Jason left the restaurant, Marcus watched his back from the window. Lynn had started walking toward a new life. All that remained was for Jason to recognize his true feelings. That night, Jason visited Lynn's apartment. However, there was no response when he knocked on the door. An elderly woman who lived next door came out into the hallway. If you're looking for Lynn, you're too late, the elderly woman said. She left for New York this morning. With 2 large suitcases. Is she planning to return? Jason asked. The elderly woman shrugged. She donated all her furniture. Said a new life is waiting and that she's becoming the head chef at Le Savoir. I'm really proud of her. That girl has a special talent. Jason held his head in his hands. He was tormented by feelings of betrayal and regret. He should have recognized Lynn's talent sooner. He should have cherished her. But now, she was gone. The night before the wedding, Jason was in his hotel room reading through the recipe notebook. It contained not just recipes, but also Lynn's thoughts, dreams, and memories of their time together. His heart was in turmoil. His phone rang, displaying Ashley's name. Jay, are you ready for tomorrow? Ashley's voice was filled with excitement. I can't wait to become a Carter family bride. Jason answered softly, yes, I'm ready. What's wrong? Your voice sounds strange. Nothing, I'm just tired. Tomorrow will be the best day. Ashley said happily. By the way, don't worry about that waitress. She would have been out of place at our wedding. Jason was silent. Ashley referred to her as that waitress, but Lynn was not just a waitress. She was a talented chef and the woman he truly loved. On the morning of the wedding day, Jason stood in front of the mirror, staring at his reflection. The white tuxedo fit him perfectly, but his expression was dark and distracted. His father Robert entered the room. Ready, son? Jason nodded vaguely. Robert frowned at his son's demeanor. Is something wrong? Dad, did you know that the chef at Bella Kitchen, the one who made those dishes, was Lynn Morrison? Robert showed a surprised expression. Lynn Morrison? Ashley's sister? No way. It was her, Dad. She's gone, so the reception food won't be from Bella Kitchen. Robert showed disappointment. That's unfortunate. That food was wonderful. Especially the bisque, it was exquisite. All our clients were looking forward to that taste. Upon arriving at the venue, many guests had already gathered. Jason mechanically responded to people's greetings while thinking about Lynn in his heart. Just before the ceremony began, Robert returned from the food tasting. His expression was clearly dissatisfied. This food is different, he said quietly to Jason. Where is that wonderful chef? Ashley approached and said irritably, it doesn't matter, it's just a restaurant. Robert frowned. Just a restaurant? Their food has made an excellent impression on our business partners. Ashley frowned. You're not talking about Lynn, are you? She's just a waitress. No, that's not true, Jason finally spoke up. Lynn was the hidden genius chef of Bella Kitchen. The chef your father has been praising was your sister. Ashley's face turned pale. At the same time, Helen and Walter were approaching. What are you saying? Helen laughed at Jason's words. What are you talking about? Lynn can't cook. She's just a waitress. No, that's not correct, Robert Carter interjected. I just called the owner of Bella Kitchen to confirm what Jason told me. Surprisingly, Lynn Morrison was a genius chef who developed their signature dishes for years. Walter frowned. That can't be. Lynn never went to culinary school, she's just a... She trained at a top restaurant in New York, Jason said quietly. Under Marcel Renoir. But she had to return home because of Helen's illness. The color drained from Helen's face. She remembered well. 10 years ago, when she was hospitalized with severe pneumonia, Lynn abandoned her promising career to return. But that's... Helen struggled for words. Ashley's face reddened with anger. So what? She's run away somewhere. Today is MY Day. Jason sighed deeply. The doors to the venue opened, and guests began taking their seats. The soft notes of the organ played, signaling the start of the wedding. Get ready, Helen placed her hand on Jason's shoulder. This is Ashley's special day. Jason nodded silently as he tucked the recipe notebook into his breast pocket. He walked toward the altar. More than 100 guests had gathered at the venue. The air was filled with expectation and excitement among the people in glamorous dresses and tuxedos. However, Jason's heart was elsewhere. His thoughts flew to New York, to Lynn. The wedding march began to play, and Ashley entered, arm in arm with her father Walter. She was indeed beautiful. The pure white dress suited her well, and admiring sounds rose from the audience. But in Jason's eyes, he felt as if he could see Lynn's figure behind her. Ashley stood beside him, and the priest began the ceremony. As the words continued, the conflict in Jason's heart persisted. Would he truly be happy? Was this a marriage based on love? Or was it merely a marriage of business convenience? Before you take your marriage vows, is there anything you would like to say? The priest's words interrupted Jason's thoughts. Jason was silent for a moment. Ashley looked at him with eyes full of expectation. The people in the venue were waiting for his words. Yes, I have something to say, Jason's voice was quiet but clear. Amid the murmur of the venue, Jason took the microphone. He took a deep breath and solidified his decision. Everyone, thank you for gathering here today. However, I have been living a lie. Ashley changed color, and Helen and Walter showed confused expressions. Tension ran through the venue. 5 years ago, I fell in love with a wonderful woman named Lynn Morrison. But for business reasons, I abandoned her, and now I'm trying to marry her sister. Sounds of surprise rose from the venue. Ashley's face turned pale, and her hands began to tremble. Jason, what are you saying? Her voice trembled. Jason continued, moreover, Lynn was the most talented chef in this town, but her family was ashamed of her and didn't invite her to this wedding. Helen stood up. What are you saying? Lynn is just a waitress. No, Robert Carter stood up and said. Her cooking was wonderful. Our clients praised it. She was the true talent behind Bella Kitchen. The Carter family relatives also looked at each other with surprised expressions. Ashley's face reddened with anger and humiliation. Jason, what are you saying? Stop this right now. Ashley shouted. Jason breathed deeply and said quietly, I'm sorry, Ashley. But I need to correct my mistake. I love Lynn. And I shouldn't be with a family that hurt her. He took Lynn's recipe notebook from his pocket and opened a page. It contained writings about the days he and Lynn spent together. This is true love. The readiness to give up your dreams for someone. Lynn hid her talent for 10 years and devoted herself to her family. But that family was ashamed of her and didn't even invite her to the wedding. The venue fell silent. Jason returned the ring to Ashley and said quietly, "I never meant to hurt you. But I can't lie anymore." He descended from the altar and began walking down the center aisle. Ashley broke down in tears, Helen's face was red with anger and shame, and Walter stood dumbfounded. Robert placed his hand on his son's shoulder. "Are you sure?" Jason looked directly into his father's eyes. "Yes, Dad. For the first time, I'm being honest with my heart." Robert nodded slightly. "Then go." Jason left the venue. He could hear Ashley's crying and the voices of confused guests behind him. But his heart was already heading to New York, to find Lynn, tell her the truth, and win back her love. The venue fell into chaos. Tension ran between the Carter and Morrison families, and the guests were astonished by this dramatic turn of events. Helen collapsed in tears in Walter's arms, and Ashley trembled with anger and humiliation. Walter held his head. "It's over, the partnership with the Carter family, everything." Meanwhile, Robert Carter calmly observed the situation. He approached Helen and Walter. "For years, you have ignored a daughter with wonderful talent. Talent like Lynn Morrison's is rare. She might have been the partner we were looking for." Helen was at a loss for words. For 10 years, she had not recognized her eldest daughter's talent and treated her as just a waitress. And now, she was paying the price for that mistake. The wedding was cancelled, and guests began to leave one after another. Ashley was surrounded by friends who comforted her, but her heart was shattered. Late that night, Jason was on a plane to New York. In the seat next to him was his father, Robert. "What will you say when you find her?" Robert asked. Looking at the clouds outside the window, Jason answered, "The truth. And if she forgives me, I want to start over. It won't be easy. I know. But I have to try." As the plane flew above the clouds, Jason headed to New York with hope for a new life in his heart. The spring sunlight in New York sparkled as it reflected off the buildings on Fifth Avenue. In the spacious kitchen of Le Savoir, staff members were busy preparing for dinner. Standing at their center, Lynn Morrison gave instructions to her staff in a calm voice. "Lower the temperature of the truffle fondant by 5 degrees. And change the plating of the main dish as we discussed yesterday." 2 years had passed, and Lynn had established a firm position in the culinary world. Le Savoir had earned a Michelin star, and she was called the new star of the culinary world. The kitchen door opened, and a tall man entered. It was Jason Carter. He approached Lynn and lightly placed his hand on her shoulder. "How's the preparation?" he asked gently. Lynn smiled. "It's going well. Has your father arrived?" "Yes, he just checked into the hotel. He's looking forward to the opening too." Since the day Jason found Lynn in New York, they had slowly rebuilt their relationship of trust. Jason had left his father's company and become an independent restaurant management consultant. And now, they were engaged and preparing for the opening of their new restaurant. Their new restaurant, Second Chance, was scheduled for its grand opening tomorrow. "There's a lot of mail," Lynn's assistant said. "Looks like congratulatory cards." Lynn picked up an envelope. Seeing the sender's name, her expression clouded. It was from Ashley. "Do you want to open it?" Jason asked quietly. Hesitating, Lynn opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. "Lynn, congratulations on the opening of your new restaurant from the bottom of my heart. I'm ashamed of my jealousy and shallowness. I'm truly sorry for not recognizing your talent and hurting you. I hope someday you'll forgive me. From your sister. Lynn quietly folded the letter. She wasn't ready to meet her sister directly yet, but she intended to reply to the letter. Time will heal it, Lynn said softly. Late that evening, Helen and Walter visited Le Savoir without a reservation. When Lynn came out from the kitchen, they were standing at the entrance. Tears welled in Helen's eyes. Lynn. Helen said with a trembling voice. We wanted to taste your cooking. Lynn escorted them directly to a table. The silence that flowed between the three was heavy while the food was being served, but when Helen and Walter took their first bite, their expressions changed. It's wonderful, Helen's voice trembled with emotion. To think we had a daughter who could make such wonderful food, how foolish we were. Lynn said nothing, but she felt something slowly healing inside her heart. She couldn't forgive them yet, but she felt that time might heal the wounds. The next day, the opening ceremony of A Second Chance was held. Lynn and Jason stood in front of the store, looking up at the sparkling sign. Sometimes in life, you need a new beginning, Lynn said quietly. And sometimes, you get a chance to reclaim what was lost. Jason squeezed her hand. A new life was unfolding before them.